Ladies and gentlemen of the frontier, it is time for us pilots to ponder. My name is Tony Moe, and I'm joined by my superb and rather sexy co-host Rob of iBlueAir JGR. Of course, if you guys are interested in seeing what Rob is working on, his stuff will be linked down in the description as well as in that pinned comment. Don't forget to look at the pinned comment, guys, because there's lots of goodness down there, and we're going to have quite a bit in terms of stuff that is relevant to today's topics and discussion. So be sure to check that out after the show to see all the goodies. Anything that we mention will be linked down in that pinned comment. So, Rob, you ready? This could technically be a very a deep and, I guess, depending on how we look at, somewhat controversial discussion, because I know everybody's going to have something to say about the weapons in the game. But
yeah, I think it's going to be good, though. I think we've got some interesting opinions to share, so I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
So we're going to be talking a lot about our favorite guns, gear, and Titans today, guys. And, of course, we ask you guys to join in, to post your own thoughts down in the comment section below throughout the course of the video. We're going to talk from visual perspective, audio design perspective, performance. We'll talk about some of the mods in the game, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about how Respawn has handled those things in Titanfall 2, and potentially talk about what we'd like in future guns, like the R101 that is coming up with the Colony Reborn release. So I guess, Rob, I'm going to ask you straight off the get-go, if you had to pick one SMG in the game to be your all-time favorite SMG, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough question, because I've always had it narrowed down to the Alternator and the R97, but if I had to never
could only use one.
If I can only use one, I'm gonna go with the Alternator because it's kind of better in some respects than the R97, and it does. I like the way it feels as well. There's the way I use a gun and what makes me want to use a gun in video games, because I've never shot a gun in real life, but in games, it has to feel like something. And the Alternator is just, it's wild. It makes the screen shake in a different way. Just everything about it feels really meaty and good.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that was actually the reason that I fell in love with the Alternator when the game first released, which I still haven't been able to dethrone it from my number one most used weapon and most kills weapon, even though I'm like 5 days into playtime now, and I've been using like every other gun in the sun. It still is my number one thing in my stats. But I would have to go with the R97 just because of its audio design. I just think that thing sounds the most ridiculous little bullet.
It does sound pretty fantastic, and I think I'd want to say it's slightly louder than all the other guns in the game.
I think so,
which
man.
Adds to it.
Like the only thing I think that makes like a more distinct noise is maybe the Devotion, but that's just because it fires for so long, so you get that like extended spool up, audio effect. But the buzzsaw of the R97. It's like when someone else is using it. And on Xbox, very few people use for the most part, very few people use the R97, I think, just because they struggle with the recoil on it. But when you do hear somebody, you just hear like bzz, bzz, like little buzzsaw flying across the sky, and you're like, oh, there's an R97 guy somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, now since they've buffed up the R97 so much, I think
it's broken,
you can safely say it's definitely, I'm pretty sure you can say it's the strongest out of the bunch.
I would agree. I think a lot of people tell me that like the car is still more accurate, but when I'm like having a really good game with the R97, exactly, it doesn't matter because it has the same range capabilities as the car, and you have more rounds being expended more quickly. So you don't really need to worry yourself about accuracy because you're going to fire like 10 bullets extra, and you're going to get the kill anyways.
Yeah, it's because the trick is with the R97 is that it's at this point they've given it the same damage value as the Vault, and like basically they've destroyed the Vault, and it's kind of disappointing how badly they've beaten that horse.
That's rough.
Yeah, because it has a lower fire rate than the car. It has the same damage performance as the R97, which means it also has a lower fire rate than the R97, and it just does less damage than the alternate. So why?
The only thing it has going for it is accuracy, but accuracy is irrelevant.
And even then, that's not even. It's not really relevant to that particular gun, because if you want something accurate, you may as well just go for the R201 carbine.
Yeah,
because that's accurate as well, and it does slightly more damage than the Vault. So I mean, I guess magazine capacity is a decent thing with the Vault, because it does have that slower fire rate, so you can kind of
Yeah.
fire a little bit longer. But
Again, like you
for
said,
all that,
it's
just use an LMG.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you got the Devotion or even the L-Star or the Spitfire at this point. Is in a better position because, like you said, more damage pretty much for the most part.
Yeah.
The R2 really is as well. The R2 is, like I said, it's the most popular weapon in console. Like, it has to be. It's the weapon I see at least 3 people using every single match. And it's like, and even on PC, like, I remember saying this before we saw any changes to the Volt or anything like that. I said specifically, the R2 should be like the go-to weapon for anyone because the damage output on it is just insane, man, for the accuracy and the range it has. It's just it's absurd, like
it's just good. Like
it's
just good,
That's
right?
exactly
There's guns that are better than it, but it's easy to use and it can do everything that every other gun can do with the exception of like the specialties, the snipers and the shotguns. It can do well like the alternator, it can do well like the Hemlock. The Hemlock will, if you get a single burst, it'll kill somebody faster, but it's just still good, and that's why it's that go-to
It's pretty
weapon.
versatile too. I mean, when we talk close quarters, it's obviously going to outperform the G2 in hipfire, and in most instances, it's going to outperform the Hemlock. Unless you are like snap firing it to ADS. So yeah, super all-around good weapon. What were we talking about now?
We were talking about my favorite weapon, which is the. I know we got off topic.
That's all good. I just was like, wait a second, I forgot how we got it. Man, guns are a rabbit hole. Guns are a rabbit hole for sure in this game.
Yeah, but the alternator, another reason I like it so much is because it has such a short, it only takes 3 bullets to kill, which is nice, and I don't like using amped weapons most of the time, so having something that kills pretty quickly without it is always a plus for me.
Amped weapons is really, I mean, apart from when I just regened recently for like the 3rd time or whatever, so I was like forced into using nothing but amped weapons, but it's like as soon as I get jammer or map hack, I'm like, I'd rather run those 2 all day long. I guess like especially if I am using the R97, I know that like amped weapons makes a difference, but it's not like noticeable enough for me in most of the engagements I'm in.
It's just 1 bullet less to kill with
like,
every gun.
With a gun that fires, like 1,000 rounds a freaking minute or whatever, it definitely doesn't seem worth it.
I think, I don't know, like I said this in a previous episode, but I still wonder how different the game would be if every gun took 1 additional bullet to kill. I wonder how drastic of an effect that would have on the game. And just the way everything plays out.
I think it would almost, it's like, I feel like with the current recoil on the weapons, maybe it wouldn't make as much as a difference to put as like in a place where Titanfall 1 is. That's obviously a game that has a greater time to kill, and almost all of the weapons have much larger recoil visually, as well as, like actual recoil.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because each gun does have a different performance to it. The Hemlock recoils significantly more than every other assault rifle, with the exception of the Flatline being pretty heavy side-to-side recoil. But it's not recoil to the point where you can't control it easily. Like, you don't have to fight with it to control
of the weapons in the game don't really even need to be burst fired. And it's like, not many people, I mean, there's like a benefit to burst firing, but
it does help.
But most of the time,
depending on the range.
Yeah, as I say, depending on the range, but most of the time we're all just kind of like squeezing the trigger, and and it's like because the time to kill is so short, it's not really an issue, but I feel like most of the weapons in Titanfall 1, you could just go full auto with like the R101, I should say, back then.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, as soon as you got to medium range, which isn't actually that far at all, you had to start bursting. Where medium range in this game, like I said, R97 full auto, medium to even long range, it's like, no, I'm not going to burst fire. I'm gonna expend an entire magazine. Maybe I'll catch the guy in the head and I'll use like 3/4 of the magazine, and then I'll just reload and I'll do it all over again. So it's that's definitely a good. I would love to actually see. I mean, I know that there's no way for us to make that happen, but I would love to see what the game would be like if all the weapons had recoil values bumped up slightly, and if we did have one more, increase the time to kill. I don't mind the shorter time to kill, but I do think maybe there's a little bit of value that's added to the whole idea of like a gunfight if it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah. And I think there was a point though, going back to the burst fire thing. When I was in my heyday, when I was at my peak of skill, I was burst firing a lot more, even with the fully automatic weapons. Just because I almost never run with speed loader, so conserving the small magazine capacity on certain guns did have a value to it.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually just trying to hit somebody, then you definitely don't need to burst fire. But the gunfight thing, yeah, it would be interesting if, when you see another pilot, it's not like he's gone. He's just instantly gone as soon as you pull the trigger. If there was a little bit more, okay, let me bounce around a little bit, try and dodge him and stuff like that. That definitely happens, but it doesn't happen as much as it could if the time to kill was a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think the only time where you really get away with those, like, if I'm like fighting a guy in close quarters, I'll probably like hop to the left or right wall if there's a wall there, just because I know that's going to throw him off. But usually that's because you're like not in an equal skilled fight, So it's like, yeah, the fight gets dragged out a little bit longer because that guy couldn't track you in a tight space because you were on the wall all of a sudden. Yeah. But if you have like a person who's, has really great aim, they're just going to pick you off the wall. They're, they're just going to track you instantly, which is what happens all the time. While we're on the subject of the alternator and the R97, actually, that's the one thing that I really do like about all of the weapons in Titanfall 2 is even though they obviously take, like inspiration from some real world firearms, they do feel incredibly unique. Actually, the alternator feels like nothing that I can think of real world weapon wise. Like, yeah, it's such an interesting
it's
little,
very special.
It has like those sort of subgun elements, the magazine obviously going into the pistol grip, but then the way it's shaped with its little foregrip on the front of it, it's like, it's such a weird little, like, they all just look so cool and unique for the most part. I think they really did a good job with the visual design on just about all of the weapons in the game. Although I will say, I don't actually like the new R2 optic. Like the default iron sights, like how they're the light sights. I think they're great from a performance perspective.
Don't get me started on the iron sights in this game, man. Don't get me started on that.
I think from a performance perspective, they're like actually kind of overpowered because they might as well be like a blue dot, I think we talked about this in the past.
But those are the best ones. Yeah. Not every gun has the proper iron sight where it's just a dot, and I hate using the guns that don't have a proper iron sight.
I kind of wish though that they all were on the same playing field at least. Like they all just sucked with iron sights, because that was actually, to me, that was again, we're talking like if the game had customization options like Titanfall 1, because that was like the sacrifice you made, right? With the R101 in Titanfall 1 was you either had a suppressor or the optic, right? So if I put the suppressor on, then I wouldn't run an optic because I liked having the iron sights, and it was like that weird trade-off,
Right.
And it was like, I like the idea of that. I think that's a simple way of like giving people a choice, to balance out something. Whereas, Call of Duty recently now has just gotten to the point where you like 6 attachments on your gun if you want.
Well, yeah, they've gone overboard in the wrong direction.
And it's like, I think that's cool, but I don't think there's a lot that goes on with, you need to make the player have some sort of a sacrifice, that risk and reward. So that is something I would have liked to see them do. We just have all the iron sights be, the same, because the R2 is, you don't really need to run an optic. There's like no reason. Like the iron sights in that are just insane. Like,
yeah, you don't need to run an optic. It like you start to feel it starts to become a decision on guns like the Hemlock, the G2, the Devotion, the Spitfire to a degree. Those guns, you can actually ask the question, do I want to put an optic or do I want to go with the default iron sight?
Yeah, because the iron sights,
but with the R2, it doesn't matter.
The iron sights are almost always worse with all those guns. Not always, I guess, but
like it's a weird thing, right? Because I've used the Hemlock without any attachment for the optic most of the time. Like once I started getting good at that game, like past hour 200, I was like, let me try it out without it. And it's more accurate to a degree because it is just that pinpoint red dot laser in the middle of the iron sight. So you can really focus your eyes a little bit better on your targets.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You don't have like the range and all the other stuff, but yeah, I think that the Hemlock is actually, like, for as much as I've used it, I've pretty much exclusively used it with the irons because I haven't used it enough to unlock any of the optics till recently, and I always thought the iron sights were pretty strong on that. I think the G2 is probably the only one that I really, really think is rough. I think the Flatline's actually pretty usable with the iron sights as well.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's smooth, and it's a freaking dot right in the middle.
It's just very clean cut, right? The problem with the G2 is really just how fast you have to fire that thing to get the most out of it, right? Like you're always spamming the G2. Like no one's over there like, let me just tap fire like 3 slow rounds and land a headshot. No, everybody's just like, like
it's basically a machine gun with the way people use it.
Might as well be. Which that was the weirdest thing when I went back to Titanfall 1 was there's a cap on the fire rate for the G2 in Titanfall 1.
Yeah, they put the match trigger attachment as one of the options to unlock the fire rate.
You had to put the match trigger on it, and at that point it was like you always questioned, I should probably just be using something else. You were like this. I think I ran match trigger actually quite a bit, but I think at one point I was just like, I don't know that this is actually worth it, because I mean the gun still, I think it was like 3-shot kill in Titanfall 1, I want to say. Something like that.
It might have been 4.
It might have been 4,
but
and I always felt like it was.
I
was. I was gonna say it was nice to just slow burst it in, just go for the headshots rather than it was more controlled. Whereas the first thing I did when I picked up the G2 when I got back into Titanfall 1 was just try and mash the trigger, and then you're like out of sync because you're just spamming your trigger and it's not firing as fast as you are, and you get thrown off by it. So that was.
It's a bit of a mess, but I guess that segues into us talking about attachments a little bit, but I do miss that they're those little options for those attachments that actually change the way the gun performs, because the attachments that we have in Titanfall 2 now, they're interesting, and I do have certain attachments that I prefer and other people prefer other attachments to what I prefer, but it's not the most important choice that you can make, and it's kind of negligible.
I agree. I think it is quite negligible. It's very much just like a pure like player to player preference thing. It's like vanilla versus chocolate. It's like at the end of the day you're still eating ice cream. There's not like too much.
I mean, let's not get carried away. They're like sometimes you want strawberry and other flavors, right?
That's why you've got the HCOG and the HCOG Ranger. Yeah, you got those other.
That's true.
Yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more impact. Actually, what I would have really liked to see them do is I like the idea of the mod system, right? But I would have liked to see that taken in combination with a traditional attachment system like they had in Titanfall 1, because I think the mods are cool. But why not like find a way to stack those with attachments to make like something really unique? Because right now I feel like, again, they're in that middle ground between we want player customization, but we want to have a more sterile competitive environment, but they don't quite hit either side.
Yeah.
We kind of just get stuck with, okay, pick your optic and pick your camo. And then,
pretty much.
How do you want your weapon to perform? And I guess I would have liked to see those things. Some of it's just like, why not just tie those things to attachments just for the sake of, again, player customization. Like if you speed loader, let me have like a fast mag thing. I think they are always concerned about people just saying it's like Call of Duty, but I'm just kind of like, I mean, everything is like everything if we really want to talk like that. So who gives a damn,
Yeah. And for Call of Duty did it right. I mean,
they were the
Call
ones
of Duty
who came
Modern
up
Warfare.
with it anyways.
Well,
so,
they were the ones that made
like...
it, so you can't copy yourself.
Yeah, right? Like, don't worry about it, man. We all get it. We were there. We played Modern Warfare. We played Modern Warfare 2. Like,
yeah. And I think Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare Remastered, they've done the best job with the attachment options and the perk options. Like Titanfall 2 has fine perks, and I guess we'll talk about those at some point today. But the way the perks were in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, it did feel more like you were building a class when you came up with certain combinations. But in Titanfall 2, you're just making subtle playstyle changes with your attachments and perks or your kits.
Yeah, it is like it's just their new, like you said, it's like nuance, like, okay, I'll reload a little faster. And like you said, it's like the more I play with something, the more I realize like I don't really need speed loader. My personal play style, it's like I'm up on walls enough when I'm engaging targets that I don't really need to like rapidly reload. I'd rather boost my tactical more with tactical. So
yeah,
I guess to some degree they do what they wanted. They probably, accomplish what they wanted to accomplish in saying that different play styles will use different things.
Yeah.
But I just don't know. I guess I feel like it's a little bit too tied to that. I guess the real thing at the end of the day is I just like visual customization as well. Like I like putting a suppressor on my weapon and seeing the suppressor. I like putting...
It does look cool, man. Suppressors look cool.
Yeah, I like putting a fast mag on my weapon and seeing the taped together mags or whatever,
I know, right?
Like,
The duct tape magazines look so amazing.
like stuff like that. It's just cool.
Yeah.
It's just cool, And I think there is a value to that because again, we're not trying to look at Titanfall 2 like it's a pure hardcore competitive game. It's not Counter-Strike, It never will
I wish,
be.
right?
So I think that stuff. I think that stuff is definitely cool. I guess what I wanted to talk about a little bit. Let's like draw a comparison here. If you had to pick one weapon that you like absolutely love the look of, but you hate the performance of, what would it be?
That's the L-Star, obviously.
L-Star?
Yeah. It's the worst gun in the game, and there's no argument to be made otherwise. Just straight up.
I agree.
And it looks amazing. It sounds amazing.
That reload animation, man.
It's 6 seconds long, but it looks really cool while you're doing it. But yeah, it's the worst gun in the game, even after the buff. I mean, sure, oh yeah, I can use the L-Star and I do great, and I can get at the top of the scoreboard. But if you used a different gun, you'd be higher up on the scoreboard. You'd have
it's exactly
30 kills
like
instead
you might
of
be able
20.
to kill those guys who are like camping in doorways because they just sit there and take a face full of energy rounds. But like you said, the reality is that you pick up something else and you're just gonna get like 10 more kills instantly.
Yeah, but it's the L-Star for me. I've always had this thought that I wish there's either a mode with L-Star only, or I wish all the guns in the game were projectiles instead of hit scan. And kind of like, have you ever played Tribes before?
Yeah, I was just gonna say like Tribes.
Yeah. If everything was a projectile weapon, then the L-Star would be a pretty interesting weapon that isn't just some goofy novelty.
Yeah, that was an interesting part of Tribes, right? Because it was such a mobility-focused game. Again, weird, the skiing, the skill-based mobility element of it. That eventually came into play. And you always felt like it was kind of intentional because when you have that fast a movement plus projectile-based weapons, you have to lead everything really weirdly. And that's exactly like how the L-Star works when you're really fast in Titanfall. So yeah, that would have been actually pretty cool. I would agree that it's the L-Star, but I'm going to talk a little bit, I guess, about a different weapon just for the sake of diversity because I was like...
Yeah, of course.
I wanted to say the L-Star too. The thing I love about the Volt is that they managed to make a weapon that when you fire it and when you play with it feels quintessentially like an energy-based gun because it is, right? But everything about it is traditional. Like you have a traditional magazine, you reload it traditionally. And I think that's the weirdest mashup ever because you watch the guy reload it and you're like, okay. And then you fire energy rounds, like it doesn't have a very odd, like, I mean, you look at the L-Star and obviously that's, like it has like a heat sink and he reloads a little heat sink into it and then it depletes into that.
Yeah.
Whereas the Volt just like, I want to know what's in the magazine.
Right? Is it just like slime or something?
Like, or are they just, like somehow energy? I don't even know. Like, are they just energy filled cartridges? Like, I just would love to see a single round from the L-Star just rendered out somewhere by one of the Respawn art teams so I could just see what it looked like. Because not for the L-Star, for the.
For the Volt.
For the Volt. Yeah. Getting my words mixed up here. Yeah, for the Volt. Like, what's in that magazine? Just let me, it'd be so cool to see. Because
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
I think that's an interesting thing to blend together, as well as they do. It's not like other games haven't done like energy-based weapons with like magazines, but they always try and kind of make them look like weird intentionally. They're like, this is energy-based, so it's going to be really strange.
Yeah, kind of like the Halo plasma rifles and all that stuff. I mean, it is alien technology, but still.
Exactly. They go as far as to design the whole weapon around the idea then, right? They're like, okay, if it's energy-based, the whole thing's got to be crazy looking. It's an alien weapon. But they were like, no, we've got like energy-based technology. It doesn't need a heat sink. It doesn't seem to overheat ever. And it's magazine fed. And they leave us hanging like that, man. No explanation.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And I guess I wonder now about, is the Devotion using the same...
It has to be using the same
technology,
tech, right?
And the double take as well, because those bullets are blue.
Yeah,
so
and they all seem...
What's going on here?
They carry some of the same design characteristics as well. Like if you look at the top rail on the Volt and compare it to the Devotion, they almost seem like they could be on the same weapons platform. Like,
it's the same factory.
Yeah, exactly. Same factory. So some company was like, hey, we can make this modular thing that can turn into a sniper rifle, that can turn into an LMG, that can turn into a submachine gun. That's the other thing too. I wish they would have explored a little bit more, but that's a topic for a different time.
Yeah.
So let's flip it around real quick, dude. So the other way around, the weapon that you dislike visually the most, but that you think has the great performance.
It is the Flatline. The Flatline it is the evolution of the AK-47 in terms of its design, but I think it's lost a little bit of the charm of the AK-47.
Why are we gonna be so in sync, man?
Is it the same for you
I
too?
completely agree, because it's like I love the idea of like the AK style weapons, right? Like there's just something about them, like the real world counterparts, and like it's like that ultimate utilitarian, design, like functionality above all else, but somehow the form comes into play and you kind of respect it. But it does seem completely lost with the Flatline, it just has a weird kind of chunky, not really, I don't know, I just don't like it all in all. Like I want to use it and I want to like it, but there's just certain design elements that I'm like, eh.
Yeah, because it's the best performing assault rifle in the game, like no questions asked. It has the same number of bullets to kill as the Hemlock, but you can fire it fully automatic, and it has better hipfire performance than the Hemlock, so you kind of should never use the Hemlock for those reasons. And the recoil isn't crazy to the point where you can't aim it down sights, and then it does have the nice iron sights as well. So it's just kind of the best one to choose from.
Yeah, you just gotta be able to personally deal with that side-to-side recoil. I completely agree, because I'd say some of my best matches were the few times where I actually picked up the Flatline.
Yeah.
Like I think on Boomtown I picked up the Flatline and I went like, it was the most kills I've ever gotten in a match. It was like 39 and 3 or whatever in Pilots versus Pilots. And it was like the second match I played with the Flatline, and I was like, especially when you have a match like Boomtown, a map like Boomtown or Exoplanet, where range is kind of limited for the most part based on the lines of sight. You can really just not worry too much about the recoil. And I think I ran like...
Yeah, you just kind of spray it.
Yeah, I just ran threat scope on it. Threat scope to like really help myself out, and just, that was the end of that.
You got to use it naked, man. Just use it without that optic attachment.
I need to give it a try again. I haven't played with it in a while. And I've actually been looking at the assault rifle, saying to myself, like, what assault rifle do I want to use? I don't want to use the G2 because it's obviously just god tier. Like, just spamming it on Xbox with like the ADS is just broken. So let's talk a little bit about the R101 before we bounce, because that's obviously coming with Colony.
Right.
And I know you and I are both kind of excited about that. I think, like we were saying, like we already said with customization, I'm gonna just accept the way that they're handling future weapons. It seems like they're all gonna have fixed, attachments, like the Wingman Elite.
I don't accept it. I don't accept it at all.
But I would have liked to. I guess at this point they can't really go like full customization, can they? Like they can't really just all of a sudden say, hey, here's like suppressors and.
I don't see why they can't. I mean, it's not like because even games with ranked and a big competitive scene like League of Legends, they completely overhaul characters and.
I think they could. I guess I just don't
change it up.
I guess I just don't think they will, as much as I would love them to.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I don't think they're gonna do it, but they can.
Yeah,
and it'd be nice.
I think it would be cool. I think it would be a great way to bring all these new guns into the fray. It would just be like, okay, this is like a redesign. I guess that's the one thing that, like, it doesn't happen a lot with games, period. But when it does, I feel like, I guess it's usually a developer that feels really comfortable with that decision, and when they do it, it's like it changes the game for the better. When you get like those massive redesigns, like the Division.
Right.
The Division was like, okay, we obviously ruined our own game. Let's go back to the chopping block and carve up something new, because we need to completely redefine this. And now you play it, and it's like Diablo third person with guns, and you're like, okay, this is great. Like it's too bad it wasn't like this from the start, because so many people have walked away, but they did bring back an audience, and you wonder if Titanfall could potentially grow from saying, yeah, let's just rethink this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Either way, though, I think you and I are both excited to see how that thing performs. We never really get to see it shooting in first person, or like apart from like a slide shot in the trailer and then a guy wall running, but that's really it. So I'm interested to see like recoil and damage compared to the R201.
I think I heard somewhere that the damage and all the other performance statistics are going to be the same, but I think just by virtue of the fact that it is a longer range optic that looks significantly different from the HCOG Ranger, it's going to have a pretty drastic effect on the way the R201 or the way that gun can be used. I've always wanted to use the R201 with an ACOG, but they don't let you. So now I'm going to be able to do that. And it's just going to allow you to play that range game a little bit more comfortably.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's going to be interesting, actually, because like we were saying, the R2 is already super, accurate. Like it already has like pretty good capabilities when it comes to ranged fire, so it'll be interesting to see if it's, if they do just copy the stats. I guess a part of me figured they might change them a bit just because the way they did the Wingman Elite, but the Wingman Elite is also technically like a completely different version of the Wingman. Like it's completely customized by Blisk and so on and so forth. But
is that the lore behind it?
Yeah, it's like supposed to be his.
Oh gosh,
it's his custom Wingman Elite. That's the lore behind it.
Ridiculous.
And I was just like, that's cool, I guess.
Yeah,
I like Blisk. Yeah,
I wonder. I do like him too. I don't play with him as a faction leader because he's an asshole. Like he's too much of an asshole, and I don't. Because when you like, he starts off, he's cool, and he's like, "We're gonna win this fight, pilot," and it's cool. But then as soon as you go down by like 1 point, he's like, "Oh, pilot, pick it up." It's like you're not down here. They called out a scorch in the first 5 minutes. You're not really appreciating the struggle that's going on. Yes, I don't play with him anymore.
As well, like the 6-4 is funny because they're kind of the opposite way. They're supposed to be like the good guy, mercenary group.
Yeah.
But Gates talks so much crap about the enemy team, man. She's just like putting them down all the time. Like I'm playing and I'm just like hearing her. And she's like, "Oh, I think they're coming back." And I'm like, "Are you looking at the score? I don't think they're coming back. They're down by like 100 points, man. And they don't even have any Titans on the battlefield."
Oh man. My personal favorite is General Martyr, because General Martyr has swagger. I think he's got the most swagger out of all the characters. His intro, where he's looking at his watch or whatever that thing is, and he's I don't require your understanding, only your compliance. He doesn't even look at you, and he just nods his head like, "Go on, get out there, motherfucker. Just go do what I hired you to do.
I'm paying you. Go do the work."
But even when you lose with General Martyr, he doesn't get mad at you. He's like, "Well, all right, get back to the ship. You fucked up. It is what it is." And that's like, all right. I feel good about that.
He's just going to silently cut your pay later. He just hasn't told you about
it. Yeah. But whereas Blisk is going to holler at you, it's like, "Oh, Paula, you fucked up. You're terrible."
Yeah. I guess I like him as a character just in the campaign because they made him like that merc who's like, "No, this is what you paid me for. Goodbye." Like... I always like the way they close
he's a fun
out.
character in the campaign. You're trying to be an Edo pilot, and he has business cards in his
yeah, right.
Instead of like an extra ammo case, he's got like a stack of Vistaprint business cards. That was the funniest moment in the campaign when he pulled out a business card and slapped it on the hull of BT. That just seems so out of place for me.
I guess it was supposed to be like that calling card thing, like, "Hey, you earned my respect," but it is.
Yeah, I get it.
It's a self-absorbed
does it, but
mercenary for sure. Thinks a little bit too highly of himself. We'll have to see where he comes into play the next time we get more Titanfall story.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
All right, guys.
But I like it.
Yeah, I think we got Colony actually. It's like 2 days from now. I completely forgot about that. So next time you guys see us, we'll definitely have to talk about Colony, our thoughts on that at some point.
Most definitely.
And of course the R101 and see how many awesomeness moments we get with all the new Prime executions. I'm definitely looking forward to those.
I'm going to buy Prime North Star. I didn't buy any of the others, but North Star is my favorite Titan, so...
Yeah, I'm definitely going to
pick that up.
I'm definitely going to get North Star. I don't know if I'm going to get Legion. I don't play too much Legion anymore, and I don't actually like the sort of weird hunched-over chassis that they designed. I mean, I know that's kind of just supposed to fit like the chassis type, right? Like the Ogre chassis type, but I'm not into it, so I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Anyhow, we'd love to hear your thoughts, guys. You want to talk about some of your favorite guns? If you want to draw comparisons to, which ones look the worst but play the best like we did, we'd love to hear some of your stuff down in the comment section below. If you want to chime in on your thoughts on the customization system for weapons, would you like to see something like Titanfall 1 return? Do you like the way the mods work? Let us know down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.
Boom.